Hey, we're talking about intimacy with God all week long, and we're wrapping up our month-long focus on an intimate walk with God. That's our third value. It's what we call our bullseye value, and when we know that, live by that, we're hitting the bullseye. We want you to hit the bullseye, and the bullseye is God loves you. And to develop a deepening intimacy with Him requires some effort. John 15 is the text we've camped out on all month long. We'll continue to look at it for a couple of weeks, tied in to our conversation, because there's 4 points of evidence of intimacy with God. All throughout the chapter, His love is clearly an evidence of intimacy. And that's our intimate priority. The second one is His joy. That comes out of verse 15. That's our focus verse for this week. Jesus said, I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. That's our intimate perspective. We'll dig into that in just a little bit. The third one was our intimate friendship, the friendship that we have with Him, His friendship with us. And that's His intimate presence. I no longer call you servants, instead I call you friends. That's verse 15 and 16. Beautiful passage. That whenever I sense God's presence, it's going to be a presence of friendship. It can be more than friendship, but at its core, this is what He wants with us. Intimacy, closeness, friendship. The last one was His intimate business or intimate purpose. His business should be our purpose. We'll look at those in the weeks to come. So let's think a little bit about this intimate perspective. Have you ever had your perspective change? Well, if you've fallen in love, you've had a perspective change. Do you remember? I hope that you've fallen in love, and I hope that it was reciprocal. I hope the other person fell in love with you too, because it's a pretty amazing experience. When it happens, your perspective changes, right? Think about it. How you think about yourself, your perspective on you changes. You feel alive, you feel accepted, you feel amazing because someone who gets to know you more seems to love you more. That's pretty powerful. Your perspective changes of that other person. How could they love me like this? I love them because they love me, right? There, your perspective of them changes. And thirdly, your perspective of everything else changes. You think, if they're just with me, everything's better. Your perspective changes. This is what we're talking about with His joy. This intimate perspective that creates joy, something internal that sees life differently. A joyfulness should be a fruit of His presence in our lives, an evidence of His presence. So let's think about the effort. So we've been talking last week, we talked about obedience as this critical thing to understand that it has to be a priority, but it's relational obedience. So let's go back to our verse 11, our key verse. Jesus says, I have told you this. We're going to go look at what this was. I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. That's all pretty good, right? Okay, so what did He tell you? Back to verse 9, so 9 and 10, leading up to 11, the joy verse, He says, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love, this intimate priority. Now remain in my love, just as I have remained in my Father's love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed my Father's commands and remain in His love. So what did He tell us to do? This trusting obedience is the effort that we put into. And this effort is about changing our perspective about what God can do in us when we believe in Him and trust Him. He changes the way I see myself, the way I see Him, and all the circumstances around me. C.S. Lewis said it like this: I believe in God or Christianity as I believe the sun, S-O-N, has risen, not only because I can see it, but because by it I see everything else. Did you connect the dots? I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but by it I see everything else. In other words, when I see who Jesus really is, it changes how I see everything else. Today, ask Him, Jesus, change my perspective. I will see you tomorrow.